Welcome to Run with Purpose. This is episode number 34. For those of you that are new to the show, my name is Flores, and I'm so very glad you found this podcast. Maybe you found it on a podcast platform, maybe you found it on YouTube, because obviously there's a video, and if there's a video, that means there's an interview, but we'll get to that in a second. But would love if you subscribe to the show. You can always reach out to me on all of the socials at flores.run. This week we have a special guest. It's going to be one of those episodes that's not about running, but it's about running. Would you say that's right, Jason? Oh, I already muted you. Nope, now we're unmuted again. I already failed.
Hey, I said, yeah. Hey, man, fair enough.
So I met Jason on the Slapcast, the other podcast that I produce, as I've spoken before, and Shannon's been on the show as well. But he was a super cool dude with lots of like great words of wisdom, just about coaching and leadership and just like everything that embodies that. So thank you so much, Jason, for joining me on the show this week.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, of course.
Looking forward to it.
I mean, the weather's actually decent outside now, so it's like it's okay to. It's like well, I don't want to be inside. I want to be outside, but social distance.
Yeah, right. Amen.
So, Jason, just tell the listeners just maybe a little bit about yourself before we hop into our talk today.
Well, the first thing I'd say is that I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to let her rip a little bit today, but I'm also going to work to mine that so we get what you need and what your listeners will benefit from. So I'm an executive coach. I'm a leadership development guy. There's a lot that I could say about that, but here's what I would sum it up by saying is that I help leaders, actually humans, learn how to communicate with impact. I help leaders learn how to bring compassion, self-awareness, and accountability to the way that they lead themselves and lead their teams.
Nice. I mean, that's well said. It's like you've said that once or twice before.
Yeah, I've practiced that a little bit because nobody really cares about what the history of my company is, or back in 2002 when I had this moment. Nobody cares about that when you're actually trying to convince them that it's worth investing in their own development and personal growth. Right.
It's one of those where, especially like you said, your story in the background is like, I don't care what you went through, but can you help me?
That's right. That's right. Let me be the hero of my own story, and you could be the very capable guide. And it's a framework that I'm a fan of, put on by a guy named Donald Miller and a company named StoryBrand. Big fan of them.
Yeah. So I'm looking through the notes here, and I don't know if I'm skipping too far ahead, even though it's not too far ahead. But you wrote this crowning moment that you had as far as running is concerned, and now I need to hear the story.
Yeah, and I intentionally withheld it from you because I wanted this to be the first time you got to hear this. So Jonathan knows this because he's met me. I'm about 6 foot 245. Okay, so for those of you who are runners, you're like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but many of you just were like, that dude's not a runner. And you're right, I'm not. But I like to run. Unfortunately, I'm not able to right now because of a knee injury, and maybe that'll come up in some of the wisdom that I try to impart upon people during the episode. So here's my story. I've been thinking about this. I'm like, well, what are some stories that I have around running and in my identity as a runner? So this one actually isn't my crowning achievement when you think about progress in running, but it is one I'm very proud of. So in graduate school, I was confined to, I trained as a speech language pathologist. That's my graduate degree. And I was a clinician for about 8 years before moving into coaching. In the midst of grad school, in order to really ward off the demons of, and I'm serious when I say this, I'm not making light, but depression and stress and burnout, I ran. And I was probably in the best cardiovascular shape of my life. Not the lightest I've ever been. I'm a former football player, not a cross country dude. And so here's my crowning achievement. I ran probably about a 7.5 minute mile for about 3.5 miles. But here's the story behind it. It was a Friday or a Saturday night. It was summertime, and we were back in my hometown of Chillicothe, Ohio. And my buddies and I were hanging out, and one of them looked over and they're like, Daly, I know you've been running a lot. It's like, what's the fastest mile you've ever ran? And I was like, I have no clue. Like, I've never timed myself. And they're like, well, do you think that you could run back to your parents' house in a certain amount of time. And I'm like, well, why don't we lay some money on it? Now, mind you, we were about 3 to 5 beers deep.
I was gonna say that's exactly how that discussion. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. I was like, oh, I've already painted the picture.
Yeah, that's right. So like, here we are. Like, I got like 3 to 5 beers in me. I don't know what the exact number is, and I'm like, let's lay some money down on it. And I honestly don't remember the amount of money we laid down. It was not much. So I borrowed a pair of shoes. I changed them into some running clothes. And at like 10 o'clock at night, I was running on like, not like a major road, not a highway, but I'm talking like 45-mile-an-hour roads, running on the shoulder of the road. No lights. It was just stupid, right? I get it. It was dumb. My buddies followed me and because they wanted to make sure I wasn't going to cheat, because I also knew all the shortcuts. But legitimately, I ran those 3.5 miles at about a 7.5 minute pace, 3 to 5 beers deep, probably mostly on adrenaline. And whatever the amount of money was, I won it. But I loved looking at them when they pulled up beside me, and I was like, that's right, baby. Yeah. Don't ever vote. Don't ever go against me, because I will prove you wrong every time.
I will find a way to make sure I get you wrong on that one. That's great.
Yeah. And I was probably sore for the next 7 days. Well, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, that's usually, because it's weird how alcohol dehydrates you and is exactly what you don't need your muscles to have.
Strange how it works, right? Yeah, there was no gallon challenge of water prior to that run. Or afterward, for that matter.
Yeah, you're just like, more beers, because we succeeded. Now time to drink more beers. Right. I don't know if I told you about this. My every year for my birthday, we run my age, which is a super smart idea. And the first year we did it, we stopped at 8 breweries. We did 30. Was it 30? It was my 30th birthday. 30 miles from Dublin to Delaware. And we stopped at 8 breweries along the way, and we were just like, yeah, this is fun. And then every year we've done it since. And then last year,
hold on, I lost you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Hold on, sit tight. I'm coming back. Sorry, gang. All right, try me now.
You got me?
No, not yet. Oh, there we go. I'm back. Sorry, gang. Okay, keep going. Keep going, Flores. I'm here.
Was it the video also cut out? I wonder if it's my camera.
No, it did not. It was my AirPods. Totally my AirPods.
Oh, okay. So you run your age. I knew you were going there. Yeah. So run my age every year. And on my 30th birthday, we did a run from Dublin to Delaware. It's about 30 miles or a little over 30 miles. And we stopped at 8 breweries along the way. It was like a fun little trip. And every year we've done it since. And so last year would have been the third year when I turned 32. And I actually did only one guy joined me last year because everyone else is smart. My birthday's in July. Let's also make it thing.
Same.
Like, it's just like, this is dumb. Why would you ever do this in July? But I ran from, we ran from Scioto Downs to Delaware up 23. So I did 32 miles on 23, which, I mean, you can imagine doing 23 up near Lewis Center and all of that, where you're just like, no, it's 55 mile an hour country or county road. Like, this is a county highway. And you're just like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to run on the side of it.
I'm thinking of like even just how you have to dodge the crosswalks, coming all the way up High Street through, how many people did you have to dodge?
Well, fun thing is, because the way 23 works, 23 isn't High Street. When you get to just south of 70, you turn on Long or whatever, and then it's Fourth or Summit, depending on which way you want to go. So I got to dodge all of that campus nonsense. Which made things a lot easier. But it was also just like the weirdest thing where you're just like, well, I'm going to keep on going. And then and then there we basically stopped at a bunch of random places. We went to Buckeye Donuts. We went to, we stopped at the Ruckmore, which is always a great stop.
Not far from my house.
It is it? We'll have to talk about that after. Yeah. We'll talk about it afterwards. We're not going to give people's addresses and stuff like that. All right. So that's a great, running stories and drinking are kind of the best thing ever, I think.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We were kind of going back and forth on what we wanted to discuss. And I kept having this idea of like growth or encouragement or influence or stuff like that. And you had a couple great ideas, I think, that we wanted to kind of roll with. I saw this like first comment you put there. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Remind me which one that was.
I help others run.
Yeah. Yeah. So, look, the tilt and the lens through which I approach a lot of my life, a lot of the talks that I give to corporations or groups, or just even when I bring to coaching is, a lot of people want to know like what coaching is. And there's a lot of different ways to define it. And I think about it as helping, in running terms, I help people run a better race. And there are a couple words in there that are key to define for each person is what does better mean and what does race mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, what are the parameters that someone would consider as their race? And largely the definition of what a better race is all up to them. It's depending on their goals. Yeah. And, another traditional way that I speak about it, if someone's like, so tell me what executive coaching is. I tell people it's this premise that you're not broken in need of being fixed, but instead you are a whole person capable of solving your own problems. I may just help you accelerate your performance, or I may help you accelerate toward the goal that you're going toward. Think of it as helping someone go from a 7 or an 8 to a 9 or a 10. Mm-hmm. Now there's coaching people who are having performance issues, but that's not what I see my work as.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are two different kinds of things, but I like the way you put that is your goals, aspirations, wherever you want to do, however you're defining better or a successful for that matter, you have to, as the individual, have to define that. A coach can't necessarily define that for you. Can help maybe enlighten you about maybe some things that, hey, you're doing these things. Maybe this is actually your end goal. But yeah, I think that's great to be able to have people have the experience they want by maybe opening their eyes to some things that could be blinders or something like that.
Yeah, totally. So here's a story. My wife and I moved back. So I'm from Ohio and my wife's from New England, and we moved to Columbus in 2017. I'd been gone for, 12 or 13 years, lived in a lot of different states. And we decided to run the capital city half marathon, except we ran the 5K. And so, which I was very proud of. And I did, I trained a little bit for it, but come on, it's a 5K. Like I could suck it through it and be fine. And that's exactly what happened, mind you. My wife is a former college athlete. She was a sprinter, not a long distance runner. So imagine that conversation around, okay, we're going to stick together, right? We're going to run this together. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. We hit the first turn and I'm like, just go ahead, honey. See ya. Right.
You already want to go. So just go.
Yeah, bye, see ya. And by the way, so the reason I brought this story up, running your own race, that's another idea behind this is we can all fall into this comparison trap. So I was fine with being in the last corral. What street does that line up on? Is that High Street where that starts? Cap City?
No.
I don't even know what.
Maybe off of Broad. Does it still start over there?
Yeah.
I think it starts off of Broad.
I think it might be Broad. So here we are, right? We're in the last corral. And by the way, passing everybody in each of their corrals on the way to the back.
Right.
And the whole time I'm like, man, this is good. I'm excited. We got time before we start. My wife was like, next year, I am not running the 5K. I will not be in the last corral. I was like, well, have fun training for it because I'm good doing the 5K.
Right. You're like 5K, check.
Yeah. So it's we're all at different starting places. We all have different finish lines. We all have different aspirations. And that's what I see in a lot of leaders that I coach. Everybody's got their own unique challenges, although there are some pretty common themes that emerge when I'm coaching somebody.
Mm-hmm. So kind of on that comparison thought, how do you, we see it all the time with runners and that sort of thing of people comparing of I'm not as fast as, and, I'm not as good as, or I don't have the physique of a runner. I remember when I started getting into trail running, Kayla, my wife, was kind of given these things of wait a second, that person is also going to be running 50 miles. I'm like, yes, honey, that person, that normal, we would call overweight or just not the runner's body kind of style.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, but also, honey, they also did a 100-miler 2 weeks ago. Like these people are stronger runners than I am, and that I might ever be. But we have this idea of certain images and that sort of thing where we focus that comparison on how can we help people help themselves, and almost getting over that comparison game and understanding that I don't need to compare myself to someone else's. This is my goal and this is my journey. They're on their journey, and it's not the same.
Yeah. Boy, there's a definitely, there's a ton of truth to that. And I can validate that just from a leadership development perspective too. So, I'll coach people who are leaders of people. So people leaders, so managers and above. And I just think of it this way, that however you slice it, if you look around, it's not hard to find somebody who might be quote unquote farther ahead than you. So I always think about it in terms of, which by the way, as I say anything that I say today, I want everybody to know that I'm not at the peak of self-actualization, having accomplished these things. I feel like I'm a student of these concepts, which is why they came up for me today. The comparison trap can be really deadly. It can be really dangerous. It can be really paralyzing. So I think you have to know a couple things. What are you running toward? What are you trying or hoping to accomplish? And the fuzzier that is, then good luck. You're just going to flounder. You won't even know how to pace yourself. And I'm really not trying to be punny here, right? But it's true. But I hear it coming out. So like as a communication coach. So my forte is in communication, presentation skills, public speaking, message planning, whatever. And I just helped I want to be careful about protecting my client identities. I just helped a local organization accomplish basically an approval. That's how I'll say it. So they contracted with me to do a gig where I was helping them craft some messaging. And when I went in there and I said, "So what do you want to accomplish?" They're like, "We want to get the deal approved." Like, okay, got that. Within what time frame? And who are you really speaking to when you want to get the deal approved? Well, we're talking to all these people. It's like, okay, if you're talking to all those people, who are the real decision makers? Right. So what I always tell people is you have to be really clear on what you want to run toward, what you want to accomplish. And so it requires a couple things. One is to know the distance between where you are and where you want to be. And if that's the work somebody does, that might be the coaching engagement. But then you also have to know not how to get there as much as how you must experiment in order to try to find the best way to get there. Yeah. Which isn't always the quickest, as we all know.
Right. Exactly. I think we can go into that all the time, like you said, of we're running someone else's race, and we can't run their pace. I would love to be able to run a 2:01 marathon, but I don't think I could run a 4:50 single mile, much less 26 miles out of the way. So if that's my unattainable, unrealistic goal, or I'm not even sure, it's like, I want to run a race. Like, okay, is that just your goal? Do you just want to run it? Well, I also want to do good. Well, what's good? And then you start kind of unpacking that. So I can see where coaching can help kind of unpack those thoughts where you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I guess that is good. Maybe I should define that, because if I can't define my end, then I don't know. We did an episode on goals a while back, and the whole idea was goals need to be specific to you. They need to be attainable as well, but they need to mean something to you. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't know the why, I would say, what the hell is the point of doing it? Like, there's no point in doing it if you don't know why you're doing it.
That's right. That can sound, I get it. The why stuff can sound so cheesy. Simon Sinek, there's a great TED Talk, and know your why. But I'm telling you, it really is. It's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. It's the reason why we as humans behave the way we do, because there's a reward to accomplish or to receive, or there's a punishment to avoid. Mm-hmm. And gosh, I'm telling you, that's priceless when it comes to helping leaders and teams come up with messaging that's meant to move people toward an end goal, to a greater end. Yeah. And so the comparison trap can be really deadly because look around, it's like you could, I lived in Atlanta for 3.5 years and my daily commute was 6 miles and 45 minutes. Talk about a comparison trap. It's like now this is my story. It's like the farther away you live from my office, which was in Buckhead, the less well off you were. Now I'm saying this tongue in cheek, right?
Yeah.
But what a stark reminder for people who felt like having a $6 million mansion means that you've made it. What a stark reminder of every time you got closer to where everybody worked and where everybody wanted to commute from. What a stark reminder of like, geez, guess I'm way behind in the race. So the temptation is like to just give up and not run the race period versus like, you know what? I'm okay. Like I'm satisfied. Like we've got everything we need. We've got the 4 walls, we've got food, we have transportation, and that's it. You can look around anywhere in any respect to anything. And there's always someone bigger, faster, stronger, richer, more beautiful, seemingly, by the way,
right.
Than what we'd ever imagine. And I think that's the last point I make about it is that, look, you just don't know what goes on behind the scenes. Some people are really good at putting on and crafting their mask. No pun intended with COVID. Seriously. It's terrible.
I love it. Love it.
But it's true. It's almost like in time they may be revealed or they may not be, but it's like, you just don't know what is behind a facade somebody might be putting up. So it's like, run your own dang race.
Right. Exactly. It's funny you say that. The comparison game or the keeping up with the Joneses, or you're always having to feel like you have to do something to be on that level. I mean, my wife and I had a 4-bedroom house in the burbs in Delaware and then decided that wasn't what we wanted. And we sold a bunch of stuff, moved to a 2-bedroom apartment, and people are like, but why are you doing that? Is everything okay? Or is everything okay at home? Is the marriage okay? Is everything fine? We're like, everything is fine. Just because what we want to do isn't what you expected us to do, that doesn't make it wrong at all. That's a whole nother topic. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you have that idea where people start doing something. You're like, you know what? This is kind of what I want to do. And then once we feel that pushback from our peers or people that we hold esteemed value, all of a sudden we're like, well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe that wasn't the right idea. And it kind of goes into the next point we have here, talking about like a control and influence of like what we can control compared to the things that are being influenced upon us.
Yeah. It's just to link these two thoughts together. Yeah. Totally. It's like run your own race. My best friend, he lives in tri-state area in New York. And we lived in New York for a spell when we were first married. It just wasn't for us. And we knew that. But it was a season, it was a chapter, and there were things we enjoyed, but we knew we weren't going to be Manhattanites. And one of my best friends, he's worked in finance his entire career, and he's got a race he's running, which I don't know, ends before 50 years old when it comes to retirement. I think that's not the race I want to run. Like I don't desire to work the 16 to 18 hour days for a condensed period of time. I'm going to take longer to run whatever race I'm running. Yeah. So that comes back to this second point, which is to control what you can control, know what you can control and know what you can influence, and know what's beyond your control. This really brings up this idea around being present to what is available in our lives. And like right now, how much control does anybody have over? I mean, seriously, like over whether you get sick or not with the coronavirus. I mean, it's terrible. It's awful. We can certainly all take measures, and I'm not here to open up a political discussion about this, but how
sometimes
much do any of us?
Not to interrupt, but sometimes you have that thing where people think of the measures are then our control of the aspect. And it's like, no. You can take measures to help prevent or maybe reduce
influencing.
But in addition, we can't control it.
That's right. It's absolutely right. I can't control if I go to the grocery store and I'm wearing a mask and I'm social distancing or trying to. I can't control if someone walks up and reaches over top of me to grab whatever it is off the shelf. I can't control that. The only thing I can control in that moment that I know of is how I respond to that, what I think about that, and how I manage any emotions that might come up as a result of that. And so that's where, as a coach, the term is called immediacy. If I hear a client who's talking a lot about them or they or the company or the politicians or whatever, it's important for me to help them shift their lens or shift what they're actually looking at by usually asking them the question around, so what role are you playing in that? And sometimes that's like the punch right between the eyes where it's like, what? Like, well, I don't have any control over it. It's like, yeah, you absolutely do. But why don't, maybe you don't know what you do and don't have control over it. So why don't we talk about that? You know? There was a thought that I had about that. Oh man. Sorry. But it's just like this idea of, manage what you can manage. That's it. And take ownership over that, but take 100% ownership over that for sure. Another concept related to that is what I say, getting on the court or getting on the course. Don't be a spectator. And I think most of my clients, I'm coaching them because they are ready to get out there and try it and take some reps and work on themselves. Which is exactly the kind of clients I want to work with. I don't want to work with the clients. It's not going to be helpful. It's a waste of money and time and resources. If say a sponsoring executive says, "Hey, I want you to work with this person," and this person is not up for, getting out there and trying stuff out. It's like, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I don't think it's going to be beneficial.
Right. I would say there's probably a difference in a sponsored person asking for like this person needs coaching rather than I need coaching. That's probably two different approaches and two different types of clients. Cause like you said, it's an investment. Like not only are they like, you know what, I want to put my foot forward. I believe this is going to help me. They're putting their time, money, and energy into this. So they better damn well believe in it, because if they don't, they're wasting everyone's time for that matter. That's
right. Oh yeah. So a funny story around this is, I had this client once. I flew to go work with her, and I show up, and I didn't talk to her once before I went to work with her because she was high enough up in the organization. She had people to help the people who helped her, basically.
Gotcha.
And, so I showed up and I said, in spite of my best efforts to have a pre-call with her, and I showed up and I said to her, so what is your vision of what we're going to work on today? And she didn't know. So I had a decision right then and there to make around judging and evaluating how motivated she was to get better. So I told her, well, here's my understanding of it. How ready are you to put in the work today? And she was ready. But it's different than sometimes when I get a call from someone, they're like, hey, I have this executive. I'd like for you to work with them. Blah, 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 blah. And I say, well, what have you shared with him or her about this opportunity? I haven't done that yet. Well, you let me know when you want to get on a 3-way call and have that conversation, or better yet, you let me know after you've had the conversation with them,
right?
About the readiness for this. So I don't know, like, what's the concept like that in running and racing? What's that look like?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a real clear thing other than that exact example of wanting to, not knowing what your end goal of things are, and you're kind of just going along with the flow, or you're bringing someone along that maybe not prepared for it, especially when you're like talking physical endurance and stuff like that. Like I've met people like, I'm going to do this race, and I'm like, but you need to train. Yeah, I'll be fine. And you're just like, nah, bro, like you can control like your training. There's certain things we've talked about. I can't remember what episode I talked about this, but I rant on most of them. It was kind of the idea of you can't control things that are happening. Recently with all this COVID stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, races are being canceled, things are being pushed out, and everything's happening. And the only thing I can control is my attitude and my response to it. I can have a piss poor attitude, but what's that going to get me? It's just going to get me ticked off at nothing. There's who am I supposed to shake my hand at? Like the virus, like, oh, grr, you virus, that I can't run. You know, like if that's my first world problem, that I'm like, oh, I can't run this race now because of this virus. You know, people are dying or sick in the hospital, but you know what? My race, gotta deal with that.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. You're hitting on something right now that, Jim Dethmer in the Conscious Leadership Group, they're based out of, I think, Chicago or Michigan, but I've done quite a bit of work with some of their frameworks, and just an amazing book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. But I'm telling you, it's not a snack. It's a full-size meal. And they talk about when we operate from presence instead of operating below the line, which, is a big distinction. When we're below the line, we play up three different roles. We play the victim, we play the villain, or we play the hero. But when we can make that shift, and by the way, we're predisposed to go below the line. Mm-hmm. It's human nature. So the idea is, how are we able to wake up and be aware that we need to shift? And then how do we make the shift? When we make the shift, then we can switch from being a victim to being a creator. Mm. And the mindset is that as a victim, life is happening to me. Mm-hmm. As a creator, life is happening by me.
That's good.
And don't get me wrong, I am not here to minimize circumstances, poverty. I'm just not here to minimize that. And I get it. Like I'm very sensitive to speaking about that as like a white male who's very privileged.
Right.
So some of us have an easier climb than others, but the premise of like being aware of how I might make my first move be toward playing a victim, like, I'm shaking, who do I shake my fist at, versus like, okay, what do we do about this? Right now, it's like, how do I respond as a leadership development person, where it's like, I want to be in a room with people and I want to be in a room with teams. And that's what our team does. At my workplace, it's like, what do we need to do? It's like, I don't know, but we need to figure out how to adapt and adjust right now. Yep. And we need to think about it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of companies are dealing with that right now, as you have, and you're seeing, obviously, like you said, it's like a PSA of there are certain situations that are out of your control, and, there's those kinds of things. But when this circumstance comes up, there's two ways to react. It's, why is this happening? Poor me. Somebody needs to help me. Or it's the attitude of, I don't know why it happened. I don't know what's going on, but let's figure it out, and get to work and make it happen. Because again, you make the excuses and what's going to happen. I was supposed to run Boston. I had a charity bib for Boston this year, and it's got pushed back luckily to September. Fingers crossed that still happens. But instead of wasting my training, if you will, quote unquote, I ran my own marathon. I ran from Galena to Groveport. I ran 26.2 miles and got a PR but it doesn't really count because it wasn't a really race. But still, it's like, I ran it on Marathon Monday of Boston Marathon. I was like, I'm doing this. Like,
run your own race.
Right. Man, look at just like full circle.
Boom, baby. Boom. That's what I do. I connect dots.
It'd been better if you just ended the meeting like, bye. And I'm just like,
done.
That was
we're done now.
Good episode. We'll just start the music. No.
Finish. Great being with you. We'll see you for part 2. Hey, by the way, to that point, did you see the dude who ran the full marathon on his balcony in Italy? Did you see about that?
Crazy.
That's insane.
I'm like, why would you, I think we said like 7 meters or something like that, or not even. I'm like, dude, I'm not running 42,000 meters on a balcony. Anyways.
Yeah, no thanks.
So we'll kind of jump quick. I know we're running a little short on time, so I want to make sure we hit some of these things too. But we had this note here of being ready to adjust, and that kind of goes into this having control and what can you do. And when, like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's how do you adjust from that,
That's right. Well, if you're already assuming from this second piece around be aware of what you can control versus what you can't versus what you can influence, coaching is always about an action orientation. It's one small shift at a time. It's not this major thing. And so and that's going to come back with a second part around uncovering your blind spots or even getting feedback. So I'll come back to that in a second. It's like one small shift at a time rather than trying to boil the whole ocean. Right. It's like a marathon is 1 mile at a time, or I don't know, one break station at a time.
It's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Yeah. Right. So I think the other part is being able to adapt and being able to adjust and being ready. It's like, here are the words I'm trying to avoid right now in the status or in the state of coronavirus. It's unprecedented, pivot, shift. Everybody's got their buzzwords right now. Right. And I'm trying to avoid this idea of pivoting, of saying it, but we have to be ready to adjust always. And so a couple of examples I'll just share from my own life. So one of my good friends, Paul, he's run the Boston, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. And it's much to like what you just said around, you ran your own marathon. Gosh, I mean, you didn't get to have all the fanfare of, did they give you any apparel yet? Probably not.
No.
Right. It's like, so you didn't get to like do that. And it goes like, by the way, I lived in Boston for a time too. And it's so cool just seeing the week leading up to Patriots Day and to the marathon. But one of my close friends, his name's Paul. He lives in Breckenridge, Colorado. This dude, we have like a guys weekend every year. And he's like, guys, like I'm going to wake up in the morning and go for a quick run. It's like 18 miles later when we're all still asleep. Here's Paul. So, first thing, like comparison trap, right? It's like he's a runner. Like he was born to run. And he's got to work at it still, but he is probably 5'7", 100. Man, he's going to kill me if I get this wrong. 150, 160 pounds. He's going to like call me and be like, dude, I'm 6'2", 200.
Okay. Settle down.
Yeah. Right. But it's interesting. So he's run the Boston multiple times. And I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, it was 50 degrees. It was a cold day. Mm-hmm. And I remember getting the text from him on our guys' text chain afterwards, and we were congratulating him. And he said, I just decided right at the start, today was not going to be a PR. It just wasn't. And I was like, oh, I was really taken aback by that, you're running the Boston. This is your 3rd time. And he wanted to crush his PR, but he looked around, he took in the conditions, he didn't feel it. And he's like, today is not going to be my day. I'm going to just enjoy the run. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I had like chills thinking about that, because what's it take for somebody who is up at 5 a.m. running the mountains in Colorado to fly across the country and go, you know what, today it's not going to be my day. I'm just going to enjoy the run.
Yeah.
So, right. Like I admire the ability to get to a place and look and go, you know what, I just need to adjust here. And I think it's important for all of us to remember.
Yeah. And that adjustment doesn't mean it's a failure. And I think so many people fall into that of, if I have to deviate from my original plan because of unforeseen circumstances, or even circumstances that you like may have seen coming, it doesn't mean it's a failure from it. You're going to learn from said experience and be able to adjust accordingly. I know that exact feeling of getting to a race and in the first few miles going, you know what? We're not. Why make it even worse? Like we're just going to enjoy the sights and sounds, and we're going to call it what it is.
Yeah, because that's where our inner critic starts to roar. It's where shame starts to come in. It's where just perfectionism can be our worst enemy. And so, like you said, it's just a terrible experience of self-condemnation, like on our shoulder while we're trying to perform. Mm-hmm. And it's life is a game. I think of life like golf. It's round by round. It's hole by hole. It's not like at the end of my life, how will I be measured upon one moment? It's a series of moments. It's a series of steps.
Yeah.
So, that adaptability is a really important piece, because we have to be able to shift in the moment. I think we also have to be willing to let go of a goal that might not be attainable right now in this moment, or to look and go, am I trying to reach too far, or am I not reaching far enough? And I think that's where coaching or accountability groups or running partners or buddies can help you. I have, I've probably enjoyed cycling more than running. in my life. I mean, look, like put my 240 pound butt on a bike. I'll climb any hill. Don't ask me to sprint it out, but it's better than like putting all that torque on my legs. Although I still do enjoy running. I enjoy trail running more than, road running, but, I have a torn meniscus and it was supposed to be corrected, the day after they canceled elective surgeries here in Ohio. And, but the way that I tore my meniscus, or at least it exacerbated, was to go on a run on vacation, flat road, didn't step wrong or anything. And I think it was just ready to go and pop. Then I couldn't walk for 3 days. And so in my own fitness, I've had to really adjust. I'm not running. Like, I'm going to pay for that. So I've had to actually, and I played a victim for a while where I'm like, I'm done exercising. This stinks. I can't exercise, versus like, no, I can exercise, but I have to just change how I'm going to train and how I'm going to actually try to gain some of the benefits of getting my heart rate up. Mm-hmm. So, right, back to cycling, my knee has never hurt while I'm on the bike. Right. Just doesn't. Right. So again, just all around the almighty, be willing to shift and change as needed.
Yeah. You always have to kind of readjust. I mean, injuries are always one of those things where it's just like, I was on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and that's what we kind of talked about, is like injuries and stuff like that. He was a doctor. It's actually called Doc on the Run. Pretty decent podcast.
Oh, nice.
But he, talked about that, like what he tells his clients and that sort of thing. And it's, it's the same kind of thing where injury, you have to kind of figure out what works for you. Then you can play the victim, and sometimes it's okay to, just be like, for a moment, just embrace it. Just,
yes,
blame the universe or whatever you want to do. It's just like, why me? This is ridiculous. But then you just got to take ownership for it. What is this going to do? I looked at the Boston cancellation or the postponement as initially I wasn't going to run my own marathon, but I was like, I need a day off. Why not? And so I did, but I've used it as like a reset kind of thing on my training. It goes, you know what? The training plan was good. There's some things, maybe I took 2 weeks off of like just less running, just let the legs heal up a little bit and then slowly work back into a training plan. I'm looking at it as a plus, like a positive, like this is a good thing that happened. For that regard. But kind of just coming into the last point here, and you've brought it up a ton of times talking about coaching and all that you do, but really finding other people around you to kind of influence you and help guide you in that direction. Because sometimes you can have those blinders and not be aware of the things that you're missing. Maybe it's like, hey, if you would run a little more efficiently, you could be faster just doing everything, like no additional fitness, like just don't swing your arms out like this. I do the T-Rex arm sometimes when I run, and Kayla takes pictures of it, and I'm like, gosh, no, honey, you got to get it when the stride's nice and tight. Don't be getting the T-Rex arms.
Yeah, it's like hit rewind. I want to show this. I want to see this. I want to look different, right? Yeah. Well, and I think that's what coaches and partners and accountability groups provide for us, is they help us to see the things that we can't see, to call them out when they're there, and to have the courage to do that with love and compassion. And by the way, I think there's a component to what you said previously, is to remind us that grief is a part of our process in life, period. As a matter of fact, and I'll spare you all the neuroscience, but right now we're all grieving the loss of something or some things. And the more that we repress and the more we stuff that down, the longer it takes to get on the other side of it. And so if we're not willing to, and by the way, part of that I think is, I'm a child of the 80s and my parents are very loving. But a lot of the comments I probably heard were, my mom, we still joke about this, is like, you stub your toe, like just rub it. It'll be fine. It'll be okay. It's like, instead of like, I don't know what I needed as a kid, but man, that really stinks. That must really hurt. I'm right here with you. So it's like, how do we help somebody, or how do we ourselves even give ourselves permission to feel the negative feelings in order to get through the other side of it? Yeah. And so accountability partners, coaches, coaching is not the only way. Trust me. I'm not that biased toward it. But we have to uncover our blind spots. And if I wanted running coaching, I'm not going to go get that from the internet. I mean, that could be a start. But if I want to find a way to get from an 8 or a 9 to a 9 or a 10, and I want to become elite, then I need someone who really is willing to help me see what I'm not doing well. So they require some expertise and some credibility, but it doesn't mean that they've got to be the best runner. It means they've got to be a great coach.
Right.
So they have to help me uncover some of those blind spots.
It's funny you say that they don't have to be a great individual. They have to be a great coach. And like the specific thing is, I always made that comment. I played baseball my entire life, and I was good, but I was never going to be great. I just wasn't. But like mechanics, everything, I was just awkward. I've got like double jointed elbows. It just, nothing works. But one thing I could do is I could coach kids playing ball. I remember right when we moved to Ohio, I coached Dublin's, I guess it was like fifth graders level kind of thing at Dublin Rec. And I was 23, 24, coaching these kids, and these parents, I mean, Dublin parents, no offense to any Dublin parents that are listening, but it's true. Thanks, Karen. Would just be like, like, what do you know? Obviously you're not playing college ball. You didn't go anywhere. What do you know about this? And I'm like, I know more than you think I do because I'm a good coach at this. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the best individual at that thing. These kids could probably throw further and hit further than I could, but I could give them the mechanics and the tools they need to continue their trajectory. That's right. Well, yeah. And you say something here too, that experience does not equate with expertise always. I've met plenty of folks who can coach well, who can do something well because they've got talent. I've met plenty of folks who can make up for a lack of talent or experience with the ability to connect and relate to people well. And that's often what great coaches do, So I think that that's an important piece here is who are you going to surround yourself with to help you get to that place? So the uncovering of blind spots, I mean, there's just things that we don't know that we don't know. Yep. And it can be a sting when someone reveals that to us, but that can be life altering for us too, especially if it's a something that's really holding us back. I was a freshman in college when I stepped on a scale at the Schottenstein Center. I worked a part-time job. I paid my way through my own college, both undergrad and grad school. Just paid those loans off 2 months ago, baby. Yeah. Sucker. 15 years later. And it felt freaking awesome. But I was working the Schottenstein Center as a state wrestling tournament, and I stepped on one of those digital scales that are more accurate than anything. Mm-hmm. And I was mortified because I'll never forget the number. It's blazed into my head. 258.6 was my weight. I graduated high school probably 230 pounds. Like I said, I played football as an offensive lineman. 1 foot in front of the other. The next day I was at Larkin's, which is, we didn't have the RPAC when I was at Ohio State. It wasn't fancy. It was a sweat box. It was disgusting. No windows. But I ran first it was a half mile and then a mile and then 1.5. And I don't think I ever ran more than 4 miles, but I busted my butt and I stayed consistent with it. Mm-hmm. And I went from 258 all the way down to 205 in a matter of 6 or 7 months because I put the work in, diet and exercise. So when I'm a coach, I think about where am I seeing somebody not noticing where something's tripping them up, like being reactive or not delegating or not finding ways to invite others into the conversation. And so I look for habits and I look for patterns and I just bring a lot of curiosity to calling that out. And I think that we can do that for each other, whether we're coaches or not. Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of the wrap up there is it's everyone can do that for someone. You don't have to be a coach because we can all coach and motivate people to find their true self and make themselves better in whatever it is they're trying to do. But I would say don't try to do things alone. Even as an introvert, it's you need people. I like my group runs. I like all of these things. And, yes, I should be social distancing, but I don't care. I'm running with my folks every week. It's just what it is because we need that. And I think, like you said, talking about grief in this situation, that's a lot of it. People don't realize why do I feel like this? It's because you're not being with people. And you don't realize how much just even simple conversations face to face, not through a camera, how much you miss that of actually sitting with someone and doing that, with the Slapcast. Shannon and she was like, hey, I don't know if you feel comfortable. Do you want to just like do it remote? I'm like, no, I'm going to your house and we're going to do this because I need some other communication.
Put some beer in the fridge, have one ready.
Yeah. To be fair, she needs to have more bourbon ready for me. Otero's been lacking the last few times I've been there, but
come on, Jay.
It's all right. I'll give him
credit. Well, and I think, it's like, so this like, run your own race, but find people to surround yourself with. And it's about how can we each expand our range today? Mm-hmm. I mean, really, it's like, you got to take it in small chunks and take it in stride. Like I can't be where I want to be a year from now if I'm not willing to try to figure out where I need to be a week from now or 2 days from now. And at the same time, there's extending grace to ourselves when we don't reach it. I think about, again, it's like, what's the range or what's my collective score, knowing that it's not going to be 100. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important piece. And, it could be a really, really good mindset for any of us to be in, and to lower expectations right now, because there is a drag and a drag to the emotions we're all experiencing that we might not be aware of. So even just being willing to adjust our finish line, I kind of say, if I'm 25%, this is going to sound awful, but if I'm 25% less productive than I typically am, I can give myself more margin for the ways that life is different and not okay right now for me.
Yeah, I think that's good, because with distractions and that sort of thing that we have now, that can be such a big hindrance right now with our productivity. Is we have a lot of things thrown at us because we're doing everything on our computer. And it's like, well, then how much time am I spending on the computer? I probably should get away and go for a walk. But you're like, but can I go for a walk? That's not being productive. So yeah, there's a lot of individual pieces there, but don't want to keep you any longer. I appreciate all of your
thanks, man,
time here this morning. But how can people connect with you if they want to connect to you on the socials?
Yeah, so I'm Jason Daly. I'm on LinkedIn, but I also Anchored Leadership is my organization, my company, my small coaching business. So anchoredleadership.com.
And we'll have that in the show notes, so you guys will be able to see that link too.
Cool. So I've got a less than active as I'd like for it to be. But again, Grace, Instagram and Facebook for both of those. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. And I also have a project with a couple of my colleagues and friends going right now, our own podcast called Wide Awake at Work. That's wideawakeatwork.com, where we talk about all things leadership. And we've been focusing a little bit of our conversations on wake up calls that leaders have been experiencing, as well as a little bit of work in the Enneagram, which I know you've heard a little bit about with my visit on the Slapcast.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, got a lot of irons in the fire, and they're all fun.
Yeah, it's you always need extra projects and more things to do. It never.
That's how I'm wired.
Why be boring? That's no fun.
Yeah, life's an adventure.
Yeah, thanks for joining me again today, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun. Willing to do this anytime, even if we're not recording, and I mean that.
Sounds good. We'll have to Zaftig or something. But everyone, you guys can reach out to me everywhere on social medias at flores.run. Again, we have the dot, but Instagram and Facebook hates me. So hopefully you can find it. Sometimes it doesn't work. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever you can find podcasts. Leave a review. You know what? A nice little a token of appreciation to see your words and see what you feel about the podcast. It helps people find this, the way the algorithms and science and stuff works. But you can visit the website, www.flores.run. My editor finally got me back my last blog, so that'll be on there. Thanks, Paige. I appreciate it. But thank you so much for joining me today. To remember to keep running with purpose, one step at a time, and we'll see you guys next week.